Okay, let's go and take a look at adding roles next into our application, and we'll head back to VS Code. And what we'll do, because a typical application doesn't have many roles, it'll be very rare to find an application that has hundreds of roles that a user could belong to. And in our application, what we're going to do is we're just going to seed roles into our database, and we're going to have 3 of them. We're going to have a role for admin, a role for a moderator, and a role for a member. And what we're going to do is seed those roles into our database. So what we need to do to use roles is we need to bring in the role manager into our seed method as well. So we're going to say role manager, and we're going to specify app role and call it role manager. And let's just bring this down. So what we'll do inside here, after we've checked to make sure that there are users or no users in our database, what we'll do next is we'll add a variable for roles. So we'll say var roles equals, and we're going to create a new list of app role. And inside here, we're going to say new app role. And all we need to do for this is open curly brackets, and we're just going to give it a name. And we're going to say the name is equal to member. And we'll copy this down 2 more times, and we'll create a role for admin, and we'll also create a role for moderator. And we'll add the semicolon so that we don't get an error in this one. And then what we'll do is we'll loop through these different roles. So we'll say for each, and we'll say var role in roles. And then inside here, what we can do is say await and role manager. And we're just going to say create async and pass in the role. As simple as that. And then what we'll also do is after we've created the user, we'll just say await, and we'll say user manager, and we're going to say add to role async, and we're going to put them, or we'll put the user into the member role. We're not checking the results of what's going on inside here, by the way. This is just our seed method. And just to keep moving forward, I'm not going to check the result of this, and if we don't get the right result, then we're going to do something, because we only run this method once, and only when our database is clean, and we're going to physically check to make sure that the data is inside there before we move forward. It's not something that our users is interacting with, so I'm skipping the checking of the result for these particular methods. Oh, and you also wouldn't typically seed users into the database and give them a password either. But because we're developing the app, we're using seed data to make sure that our app is functional. So then what we'll do below the users, what we'll also do is we're going to create a new user for the admin. So we're going to say var admin equals new app user. And all we're going to do here is give the username equal to admin. And I've set this lowercase just to be the same as the other users as well. And then what we'll do is we'll say await user manager, and we'll say create async, and we'll say admin, and we'll give it a password just the same as our other ones as well. Remember, this is just for development and testing. I wouldn't really create an admin user with this weaker password. And then what we'll do after we've created our admin user is we'll say await, and we'll say user manager, and this time we'll use the add to roles async, and we'll pass in the admin as the name of the user. And this takes an IEnumerable of string as the roles. And what we could do here is we can just say new and add square brackets for an array, and then we can open curly brackets, and then we can pass in the admin, and we'll also, after this quote, we'll add in moderator as well. Obviously these are strings, and if you spell any of these wrong or differently to what we've used up here, then you're not going to be added to the correct roles. And then what we also need to do is head across to our program class, because we also need to pass in the role manager as well here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to say var role manager equals services, and we're going to say get required service, and we're going to pass in the role manager, and then pass in app role in this case. And then we can pass in the role manager as an additional parameter here. And then what we can do is drop our database once again, and reseed the data in, and we should see the roles inside there as well now. So what we'll do, we'll stop the server and we'll say .NET EF database drop, and we'll confirm, and then we'll just say .NET watch run to go ahead and reseed our data, but this time we're going to have roles to work with as well. And that will look pretty good. So let's go take a look at our database. And if we take a look at our ASP.NET roles, first of all, and show table, then what we should see inside here is the 3 roles that we've created. And if we go and take a look at ASP.NET user roles, what we should find is that we've got our 11 users, and one of these users is in 2 different roles. And we can see role ID of 3 and 2 for user with the ID of 11, and every other user is in role ID of 1. So we're good. We've confirmed that our seed method worked, and we've got the roles in our database, and we've got our admin user there as well. So what we'll take a look at next is adding these roles into our JWT token so that we have access to them when a user authenticates. Okay, now that we've got some roles in our database, what we're going to do is add additional claims to our token. So I'll just claim up these at the top. And what we want to open here is our token service. Now we've got 2 claims going back already for our user ID and our username, and what we also want to pass inside this token is the roles that a user belongs to. Now our token is a safe place to put the roles. The user cannot modify their roles to trick our server into thinking that they're an admin. It will not work. Once the token has been modified, unless you happen to know the secret key that you're using on a server, then you cannot modify the role and pretend that you've got an elevated level of permissions. So the token is a safe place, and we trust our token on the server when a user presents it. And what we'll do here is we're going to add our user manager inside here, not our role manager, our user manager, because this is how we get the user's roles. And we'll pass in the app user, and we'll call it user manager. And we'll need to bring in ASP.NET Core identity, and we'll also need to initialize the field from parameter. And what we'll do, we'll come down below our existing list of claims, and then we'll go and get the user roles. So we'll say var roles equals await, and then we'll say user manager, and we've got a method in here to say get roles async, and then we can pass in our user. And we get an error here because this is not an asynchronous method. So what we also need to do, because this is only asynchronous, we can't get a synchronous version of this method. So what we also need to do is convert this into a task. So we'll say public async task that returns a string, and we'll bring in system threading tasks inside here as well. What this means is we need to update the interface as well, so that we also specify that we're returning a task from that. So we'll update the iToken service, and instead of a string now, we're going to be returning a task of string. And we'll need to bring in system threading tasks here. So back to our token service, now that we've removed that particular error, inside our roles is going to be the list of roles that this user belongs to. And what we want to do is add them into our list of claims. So the way that we can do that is we can say claims, and then we can add range, and then we can say roles, and we can project from here. So we'll say select, and we'll bring in system.link to use this. And then we say role, and then we add an expression, and then we're going to say new claim, and we're going to say claim types this time, and we'll say role, and we can pass in the role that we've got from our select. So we select the roles from a list of roles, and then we create a new claim, and rather than using JWT registered claim names, we're going to be using claim types, because the JWT registered claim names do not have an option for a role inside here. So whilst these are the JWT registered claim names, there's nothing to stop us using custom ones. And inside the claim types we have here is a role claim, and we can use that to add it to our token. And the rest of this stays the same. And what we'll also do is we need to update our account controller, because now we're using an asynchronous method here. So we'll go to our account controller, And what we'll do is we'll say await token service, create token, inside the login method, and we'll do the same thing inside the create token method. And while we're here, what we'll also do is add the user into the member role as well. And then what we'll do is say var role results equals await, and we'll say user manager, and we'll say add to role async, and we need to pass in the user and the role that we're going to put them in, and we're going to put any newly registered user into the members role, and we'll check and see if the role result is successful. And if this has not succeeded, then again we're going to return a bad request, and we'll just say failed to add. In fact, no, we'll do the same as we did with the other one. We'll say result.errors, and that's what we'll pass back into our bad request. So now when we register a user, they're automatically going to go into the member role. So we'll do a couple of checks, but first of all, we'll just set up something really simple to make sure our roles are working. And what we'll do, we'll head over to our users controller. And what we'll do for a couple of these methods inside here, we'll just check to make sure that our roles work. And inside the, or above the HTTP GET for the GET users, what we're going to do is add an authorize attribute. And for just temporary, we're going to say roles equals admin. So only admins can access the full list of users. And like I say, just temporary, just so that we can make sure our roles are working. And then what we'll do for the individual HTTP GET, we're going to say authorize, and we're going to say roles equals member. So members can get an individual user, whereas only the admin can get a full list of users. So we've got a few things to check here when we go back to Postman. We want to make sure we can register a new user and they're automatically put into the member role. We want to test our roles themselves to make sure that only admins can get this list of users and only members can get an individual user. So we'll head back to Postman, and what we'll do is we'll go to section 16 and let's register Bob again. And in the body, because we dropped our database, Bob has now disappeared. So we'll click on send. And we've now registered Bob. And let's copy Bob's token. And we'll go across to jwt.io. And we're just going to paste in Bob's token and make sure we see that he's in the member role. And he is. This is how we see our roles inside our token. Excellent. And we'll head back to Postman and we'll do some more tests. So I'm just going to log in as Lisa, and this token is saved as token. So I'll click send. Just make sure we've got a token for Lisa, and then I'm going to try and get the list of users as Lisa. Now this is the one that we said is admin only, and I'm using Lisa's token, which is just token. And if I click send, then what we get is a 403 forbidden. And a 403 means that yes, our user was valid, but no, our user is not allowed to do what that user tried to do. And then what we'll do is we'll log in as admin, and in the body, we're logging in as admin, and in the tests, then we're saving this token as admin_token. So this time, I'm just going to click send to log in, and if we just copy this token into our clipboard and go and check the roles, and we'll paste this in, then we can see that our admin is in both the admin and the moderator role. And if we go back to Postman and we get users as admin, and in the headers here we've got the admin_token, then this request should succeed, and it does. And if we check the other case and we try and get an individual username as Lisa with Lisa's token, this one should work because we set this one to member and we see Lisa. And if we try and do the same thing as admin, and we're using the admin token here, then we're going to get a 403 because we set that one to be members only. So our roles are working. But nobody really specifies roles like this in the authorization attribute. So we'll remove these and we'll look at an alternative option next, which is policy-based authorization. And we'll take a look at that next.